Today we're going to talk about the easiest way to deploy Kubernetes Dashboard and be able to access it once you have created a Kubernetes cluster. So first off, what is Kubernetes Dashboard? It is a very simple, intuitive, web-based user interface which you can use to deploy different containerized applications, look at different resources that your Kubernetes cluster has, resource utilizations, basic metrics. You can use the dashboard to have an overview of different applications running in your cluster, which pods are they deployed on, which nodes those pods reside on, and so on and so forth. The typical recommended way to deploy kubectl to deploy the Kubernetes dashboard is to use kubectl proxy, which is a way of accessing the Kubernetes REST API, which uses HTTP for connection between the local host, that is your local machine, and the proxy server, and the HTTPS for the connection between the proxy and the API server. And it's outlined over here in the official Kubernetes documentation, and you can go through it. However, there is an easier way of accessing Kubernetes dashboard for your cluster, which is you exposing the dashboard service as a node port on your cluster, and then figuring out which node of your cluster has the pods for dashboard service, and accessing that dashboard on the publicly available IP address and the random port that gets assigned to it. And we have made that easy for this to be deployed easily. It's publicly available on the GitHub repository on Aerosol DevOps GitHub. We have outlined all the different steps here. Essentially, what you need to do is to get the recommended dashboard YAML file, modify it to replace the cluster IP with nodeport, and then create a service admin role, create a role binding YAML file, and applying those YAML files through kubectl. And this way you'll be able to deploy the dashboard service on your freshly minted cluster if you want to access it that way. There are a couple of other steps that are required, figuring out which particular node those dashboard pods are deployed on, and then figuring out which random port the service is exposed on. However, this is automated. All you have to do is to essentially clone the repository from our GitHub, apply that repository, and then run a small tool to actually grab the IP address and the port combination, as well as the token, to log into the dashboard using that small tool that we have written. So let's get started. Let's clone this repository from GitHub, and here's our cluster. Let's see what our cluster comprises of. So this particular cluster has get nodes -o wide. This is a 3-node cluster running on CentOS Linux 8 with the container D as the container runtime. Let's see if we have any previous dashboard pods running on this or not. So we do a kubectl get pods so all namespaces. Let's do all namespaces so that we are sure there is none. And then if you do a O wide, it will tell you which node each of these pods is running on. Anyways, so let's do a git clone of the repository that we have on publicly available on our GitHub. Downloads it. Let's see, go in there and have a look. These are the files. So we have basically 3 YAML files: the service account admin, role-based access control, and the deployment file. And on top of that, we have the get dashboard specifics script, which you can actually look here and modify if you based on your customized cluster configuration. So let's go ahead and deploy this thing. And in order to do that, you can simply do a kubectl apply -f and give it the directory. And here you see it creates the namespace, it creates the service account, it creates the role bindings, it creates the service admin role, which is called cluster admin or admin user. Once it's done, let's see if we have the deployment ready or not. So if we do a kubectl get pods, all namespaces, O wide, you see that the Kubernetes dashboard, the matrix scraper, as well as the dashboard service have been deployed, and they are running on node 3. So in order for us to actually access this dashboard, we need the publicly available IP or publicly routable IP address, which is not this IP address. This is an internal IP address based on, you know, the CNI that we have, the CNI plugin that we have used, which is Calico. If we try to access the dashboard through this, we're not going to be able to do that. So what is the publicly routable IP address for node 3? If you have deployed through a standard Kubernetes deployment mechanism like kubespray or kubeadm, you must have specified the nodes and their IP addresses in the hosts file. So that tells us that node 3 is IP address 10.10.1.123, and that's the IP that we need to access. What about the port? So in order to get the port, you will need to do get services, kubectl get services, and it will tell you which port the dashboard service is exposed on. So the combination of this IP address and the random port that the Kubernetes has allocated for this, for getting exposed to the outside world. In addition to that, you would need a token in order to log in to the dashboard. And well, all of this information, instead of going through and, you know, typing all of this information manually, all you can do is go to the Kubernetes folder, dashboard folder, change the script permissions, and then run that script. Then that will tell you that, you know, which IP address, which URL that you need to use, along with the IP address and the port combination to access the dashboard, and then the token that you're going to need in order to access that. So let's go ahead and do that. Do this. It will provide you a potential security risk, but, you know, it's safe. We're in our internal network, so we're going to go ahead and accept the risk and continue, and it will present you with a token. Token challenge, and this token is available here. You copy that, paste it into this field, and then sign in, and voila, here's your Kubernetes cluster. And you can look at different aspects of it. How many nodes does it have? What is each node's what are the different labels that are associated with them, with each of the nodes? What is the resource allocation in terms of CPU, memory, and pods? What are the different cluster roles? If there are any deployments that are running there, you can change that for all namespaces or the default. So if you do all namespaces, it will show you all the different deployments that are in all the different namespaces in your particular Kubernetes cluster. And it is simple, as simple as that. So if you like this, subscribe and like this video, and check out our GitHub repository and give it a star. Thank you.